Hi, it's Sherry at Savvy Business Resolutions with another episode of Investing in Conversation, Conflict Management for Managers. Last time, we were looking at the conflicted relationship between attention and information and how that causes conflict between us by creating misunderstanding. This time, we'll bust a myth, hear from a customer service specialist speaking from experience, and you'll get 2 tips for the price of 1 on the multi-layered, multi-dimensional relationship between attention and technology. So we come to this week's myth. We're all expert jugglers now, aren't we? Certainly you see multitasking everywhere, all the time. People shopping while they're watching telly, doing emails while they're on the phone, writing plans for podcasts while they're catching up with somebody else's pod. Oops, did I say that out loud? You might say, well, that's just the way it is. That's life in the 21st century. But there is a slight problem with that. Professor Michael Proulx of the University of Bath explains.
Really what multitasking is a fairly rapid, though it's often pretty slow, switching of attention from one thing to another. And so certainly whenever you switch, there's a cost.
In a commercial context, even if you are in the meeting and the MD or the client or whoever has just said something and you jump onto the web to check it or to find some background on it, unless you're saying to them, hang on a minute, I just want to look this up, and then you contribute something new. But if you're doing that off your own bat while someone else is talking, you're still not going to be able to pay attention to the next part.
Yes.
Although we think we can multitask.
But we really can't. It's a difference from taking notes. So if you are taking notes about what a speaker is saying, you are making an ongoing connection between what they just said and what they're now saying. You can always adjust those notes as you go.
Now, we do need to make a distinction here between things that we do automatically and the stuff we have to think about. Most of us can, most of the time, at least when we're sober, walk and talk at the same time. Because those things are really overlearned. We get into trouble when we try juggling cognitively demanding tasks. A lot of research on that has involved students. Michael again.
So a number of studies have been carried out examining the ultimate performance of those students, either on exams that just test them for being able to regurgitate knowledge or having some sort of assessment of their conceptual understanding of the content. And in both cases, those who are using some sort of electronic device perform far, far worse.
That was my instinctive feeling, but I didn't know if that was just me being old-fashioned.
Yeah, that was my concern originally too, actually, because it's easy for me as a lecturer to think back to what lectures were like when I was a student.
Yes, we had to sit and listen.
Exactly.
Why shouldn't you?
Exactly. But fortunately, a number of other psychologists have been carrying out studies in this area.
Having devices in the classroom has been a hot topic for debate for a long time. Just recently, there have been calls for a ban on phones. But Professor Jessie Stommel of the University of Mary Washington doesn't think that's the way to go.
The thing that I object to is blanket policies that just say nobody can have a laptop or a device in this classroom for any reason, because what that does for me is it shuts down the conversation.
A few minutes ago, I was talking about using mobile phones in meetings. And a lot of people that are in the habit of doing that are absolutely convinced that they're saving time and they're being more productive. But Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan Chase, has said just recently, actually the opposite is true. And he's had support from some top leadership coaches. I suspect a lot of people got used to this kind of multitasking when they were working remotely. But now, with more and more bosses calling their teams back into the office full time, it's proving a hard habit to break. The trouble is, because when we're juggling, we're actually dropping little balls of information all over the place, we're much more prone to make mistakes. Decision making is not so sharp, it's not so clear. And one of the decisions that is regularly affected by that is the decision about which medium to use for a particular interaction. It feels quicker to text than talk a lot of the time, doesn't it? And of course, it's easier to hide if you're doing something else at the same time. That's okay for a quick transaction. But if you need to explore an issue in more detail, It ends up being a false economy. Yes, okay, most people can read faster than they can listen, but it swings and roundabouts because it's slower to type than talk. Then there's the wait in between messages. All right, it might only be a few seconds each time, but it mounts up. And of course, the medium shapes the message. Well, in this case, it reduces it to the basics. So you then have to spend time filling in gaps in the information and making sure that everyone's interpreted it in the same way. We're back to clarity and completeness from last week. By the time you've done all that, it would have been quicker to just pick up the phone. Time isn't the only reason a lot of people are not happy doing that. That came up in my conversation with Michael. People who are complete or believe that they are completely reliant on their eyes can struggle to stay focused on the phone because they've got nothing to look at.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have this thing, they might pick up and start doodling. Or these days they might have the iPad in front of them and be going onto the internet or whatever.
Right.
And they are not necessarily, they don't necessarily know how to focus on listening to that voice, which isn't always great quality. It's not always great sound quality. It's not always the easiest thing to focus on. But they're not focusing on it, and therefore that's impairing the conversation. But that can be unlearned, can't it?
Absolutely. I mean, if anything, by paying less attention to a conversation that might be a bit staticky or something like that, it's just making it even worse. They're getting that much less out of it.
Yes.
And it's all just because they're not shifting their focus there. Because if they were to shift their focus there, I mean, you can actually see in the brain sort of the boost in activity in those areas that are used more for listening.
Yes.
And by doing that, it actually is a process that can reward itself.
Right.
So as they listen more, pay better attention to what they should be listening to, they're going to get more out of the conversation.
The thing starts to sound clearer
Right.
than it actually is.
It absolutely does. It'll start to sound clearer because they're paying more attention to it. And then in the end, it'll be more rewarding because they got more out of it.
Yeah.
And so that will encourage them to continue and try harder again.
One area where, in my experience, conversation is often underinvested is customer service. Speaking from experience this week is Ivan Newman. When he was running a company called Living Inside the Brand, we got together and made a podcast of the same name. Now, this was back in 2011, but the basic principles haven't changed.
I was in central London, walked into a health food shop as it happens, and wanted to get something and couldn't find it. Went to the desk and was met by this young woman talking enthusiastically, I might say, but not to me, to her friend in Spanish on her cell phone. So she was engaged with her friend, not me, and I stood there like a lemon for 3 or 4 minutes. There was no eye contact. She basically had her back to me. She looked around every so often to make sure I was still there. Actually, she was probably making sure that I'd gone and wouldn't interrupt her phone call. I was just fuming, and that to me was the most appalling case of glum service, not engaged with me.
But it's depressing as well, isn't it?
It certainly is, and each branch of that business is its own little organisation, and woe betide that company if that's the attitude throughout.
That's a negative story. Cheer us up with a positive one.
My window cleaner comes round every 2 weeks to obviously clean windows. And he not only makes the windows shine, he makes the day shine. He's such a positive individual, and you know, he's not got an easy life. He has epilepsy. His daughter has epilepsy as well, and you know, the combination of going up and down ladders and epilepsy, yeah, maybe he's got a bit of a challenge there. But what a service he offers. Before he comes, the day before, he texts saying that he's coming. He knows which houses he needs gates opened for, a side entrance to give him access to the back of the house. Ours is one of those. By the same token, if the weather's miserable, he texts that he's not coming. And then when he arrives, he's got a smile on his face. He's up and down the ladders with his window cleaning mate. And then he rings at the door, and I'm sometimes home, and the first thing he does is he smiles, and the first thing he says is, "How are you, mate?" And absolutely, you respond to his smile and his desire to understand how you are. So you chat, you ask him how he is. He never complains about his epilepsy. I got that from him after quite a long conversation. But he engages me positively, he's enthusiastic, and he always ends with, "Well, I hope you have a great next 2 weeks, and see you then." And the day is lightened. It's a great service that he offers.
Bigger businesses could learn a lot from him, couldn't they?
They could indeed. Maybe that's an approach we should take, offering a day out with my window cleaner.
I like it. Perhaps we'll put that up as a future competition prize. So, what's your do-today tip?
My do-today tip is to go back to this idea of positive and enthusiastic engagement with the client. Ask the customer what they want to get out of the transaction. Now, you can ask through your body language. You can ask explicitly, "What would you like to do, sir, madam?" And by doing that, you're then able to deliver this can-do service. So you get from the customer what they want. You're not glum. You engage them. Then you can start to deliver to the customer's real needs.
We just had to take a break from the recording, didn't we? Because your phone went off.
It did, Sherry.
First rule of recording, switch off your mobile phone. But actually, on this occasion, I'm quite glad you left it on. No one's going to believe what just happened, but, well, you tell the story.
You're right, Sherry. No one's going to believe this, but the text is from the window cleaner himself.
It's mad, isn't it?
It's mad. He must have had, precognition of what we were doing. And it says, "Window cleaner will be with you tomorrow if needed." Just what great service. So maybe I need to add a session to these episodes, the extrasensory perception aspect of customer service.
My tip this week is invest in well thought out customer or client feedback conversations. So many, especially the automated kind, are way too narrow. Okay, that's probably deliberate in some cases. They're trying to push the respondent into a more positive answer than they might otherwise want to give. But in the long run, it's much better to get a more rounded view, which you can only do if you open up the questions and really pay attention to the answers. Not only will you have invaluable information to draw on if you want to follow Ivan's advice, you'll also be much better placed to find collaborative ways of managing conflicts. There are some more tips on the blog, including about reviewing your own attention investments. I always try to finish the show on a lighter note, so I'm going to share with you something that happened to me a couple of years ago, which really demonstrates how not to get positive customer feedback. Right, well, what happened was I decided I needed to buy a new mattress. Fine, I went online, I placed the order, and the delivery arrived. Once it was in situ, I got an email asking me to fill in a customer survey, which I was quite happy to do. The only problem was that when I clicked on the link, it had already been filled in. And guess what? They'd got top marks for everything. Then I looked at the name at the bottom. Sehiree, Sehiree. And I thought, that's a name I haven't come across before. And then I looked again and I realised it was an anagram or a scrambling of Sherry, Sherrie. The guys who did the delivery had obviously filled in the survey for me and signed off for me, but they gave themselves away because they spelt my name wrong. Well done, boys. That was a sort of example of tech as a diversion of attention. When it comes to distractions, I'll leave the last word to Jessie.
I mean, you could look out into a room full of people and they may all look like they're listening to you with rapt attention.
Yes.
But who knows what's going on inside of the brains of every single one of those people. I mean, honestly, we think about devices as distracting. Let's talk about our own brain as distracting. And so would you ever tell students not to bring their brain to class? And sometimes if I'm just listening to someone who's lecturing at me I've sat through a 2.5-hour lecture. I actually wished I hadn't brought my brain.
I can't follow that. So I'll just wish you a peaceful and productive week. And I'll talk to you next time. If you need help with any aspect of conflict management at work, come and talk to me. All my details are on the website, savvybusinessresolutions.com.